been talking about what I think is basically a return to normalcy of a weekend in many different parts of American sports. Variety of different sports. Atlanta Braves have a big game on Saturday on FS1. It's the national game. On Sunday night, they have the Mother's Day night big game that's going on with the Phillies. Big series there. 100% crowds present. You just heard us talking about that with Barrett Sallee. But that's not it. We had the Canelo Alvarez fight with over 70,000 fans present. We had a really normal situation, it felt like, in Charlotte with golf, Darlington, the race with NASCAR. Everywhere it felt like things are starting to get back to normal in many respects. And I think as we inch closer to Memorial Day is going to be, I believe, the official return to normalcy in this country. I think there's going to be almost no restrictions on COVID anymore by the end of this month, and even places that are severely locked down historically over the last year, New York City, New York State, heck, even California is saying that they're officially opening back up on June 15th and everything's going to be back to normal there. But I think Memorial Day and basically every day for the rest of this month, it's going to be hard-pressed to be able to tell very much different. I think there are going to be a lot of masks that vanish. I think if you watch that Atlanta Braves fight, the game or the fight going on with Canelo or the outdoor golf tournament, I think anybody who wants to wear a mask can still wear a mask. I think masks are going to vanish in a heartbeat. I really do. I think they are going to vanish. I mean, I've been in one restaurant in my area of Nashville in the last couple of weeks where somebody even mentioned that I needed a mask. Like I had one in my car for a long time. So whenever I was going into a business, if they wanted you to put one on, it's to the point now where I don't even have one in my car and I forget about needing one at all. Like I went to a restaurant on Friday night and they asked me if I had a mask when I walked in. And look, all this is cosmetic theater at this point. Can we be honest about this? It's been that way for a long time. You want me to wear a mask to take 8 steps to sit down at my table and then take it off? I mean, all of this was a joke, I think, in many respects. It was cosmetic theater. I think we need to, sooner rather than later, at places like Disney World and Disneyland. I mean, I was talking to a buddy, and he was down there with his kids at Disney World recently. He's like, man, it's 95 degrees out. And we now know that there's almost no transmission outdoors of COVID. And it's 95 degrees, I think you're going to have people stroking out wearing masks more. The danger of just getting overheated is more substantial than the danger of being able to spread COVID. I think we just need to get back to normalcy. And to me, seeing a foul ball hit into the crowd and seeing everybody without their mask trying to catch it and seeing all those guys who were there to watch the big fight with Canelo Alvarez, seeing the way they were able to experience that in an entire Dallas Cowboys stadium, basically with nobody wearing masks, with everybody drinking beer and living it up and having a good time. That is, to me, what we need to get back to. And I feel like in many ways this weekend was a return to normalcy in the world of sports. And trust me, I've been fighting for this for a year. I mean, it would be interesting to go back and listen to all of the months of radio programs that we did when there were no sports going on and we were trying to advocate. If some of you, I'll talk about this with Petros tomorrow on the show, but a lot of you will remember early on when all the sports were shut down, I was one of the first guys who floated the idea of a bubble. In fact, Danny G, that would be fun to play for Petros potentially tomorrow on the program when we have him on, was his reaction to my idea, if we could track down the archives of it, when I was floating the idea of there being a bubble. Because ultimately, the NHL and the NBA both ended up doing it. But in around, I think it was like April of last year, I was sitting around arguing, hey, there's a way to do this bubble, fine. I wish I'd been smart enough to think of Disney World in particular. But what I said was, hey, just go to a college campus that has multiple basketball courts. I think I even suggested Las Vegas, and just allow the season to be played there. And Petros, you would have thought that I've had a lot of wacky ideas, but you would have thought this was the dumbest idea of all time that I had floated and the way that he had responded to it. I mean, it was just crazy the way that ended up coming down. But the Petros reaction to it was absolutely extraordinary, just how ridiculous he basically let me know that he thought that entire idea was. So, as we start off the Monday edition here of the program, I feel like in many ways we are back to normalcy. This past weekend, both in golf, in NASCAR, in Major League Baseball, at least for a big series that was nationally distributed, as well as for boxing, all of those different sports felt normal. And I think, honestly, the big debate going forward, which is going to change and spin and adjust in a hurry, and I'm going to talk about this some tomorrow, but I'm going to kind of hint at it today. I think the competitive advantages that are going to be present in the NHL and the NBA playoffs are going to hasten the return of crowds in a hurry. Because I think you can look out on the horizon and think, hey, is it crazy? Or could we see the Dallas Mavericks having basically a full arena with Luka and the Mavs based on the fact that the Texas Rangers have had full crowds and now Jerry Jones has had a full crowd in the Dallas Cowboys Stadium? Is it crazy to think that the Dallas Mavericks could have close to a home court advantage that is nearly full in the NBA playoffs? I don't think that's wild at all. And is it crazy to think, and I've talked about this for a while, that, for instance, the Utah Jazz, given the fact that Utah has been more aggressive, or the Phoenix Suns, given the fact that the Arizona area has been more aggressive, in the Western Conference playoffs, I think you could find a situation where the Lakers and the Clippers and, let's say, the Trailblazers are at a substantial disadvantage when it comes to home court fandom. And I think the pressure could get ratcheted up in a big way if you start to think about, let's say, the Nashville Predators, for example, or the Carolina Hurricanes in hockey. The teams that are in the South are going to be more likely to have big crowds. And you start looking and thinking at the playoff scenarios, and I think it does become a big question of, man, as if already it wasn't hard enough to go through all these different permutations and parameters in order to win a championship. And then you're going to tell me, like, I can run through right now and tell you, in, for instance, the NBA, the Utah Jazz are going to have home court advantage probably. They're close to winning home court advantage in the Western Conference, and they're probably going to have a lot of crowds present. I think the Phoenix Suns could end up. I think that the Dallas Mavericks certainly could. And then you look around at some of these other teams, and even in the play-in series, the Memphis Grizzlies and the Spurs. What are the Spurs doing right now for crowds?
They've got decent crowds. They're still not at full capacity yet, but I agree with you. With more events happening, with more and more fans coming, I could see full crowds being completely normal in like less than a month.
Yeah, right. I mean, and to me, look at the play-in scenarios right now in the NBA, right? The Lakers and the Golden State Warriors are unlikely to be able to have that big of crowds, right? But the Memphis Grizzlies and the San Antonio Spurs, assuming that those are the teams that also get into the play-in round, like, they could have substantial home court advantages compared to the teams that they're going up against. That's in the West. And then in the East, you could see Charlotte having a decent home court advantage, and maybe the Pacers having a decent home court advantage, and not as much the Celtics and the Washington Wizards. Well, I could see that factoring in a big way as you start to assess the overall landscape. I'm just using the NBA as an example. The NHL is a bit more complicated, but I think that's where we're headed, where competitive advantages could end up opening up all of these different leagues in a big way. Now, by the way, I said I was going to talk about Aaron Rodgers. Here's what I'll do. I know we're going to talk a lot of Aaron Rodgers, but Aaron Rodgers a little bit out of the news over the weekend, although I don't know if you saw this, you guys out there. There was a reported Aaron Rodgers doppelganger who was walking around in Green Bay that was getting all this attention. All the media guys were like, hey, Aaron Rodgers is back. I saw him, like, and then people are like, wait a minute, no, Aaron Rodgers is not back. I mean, we saw Aaron Rodgers at the Kentucky Derby, but there were false sightings of Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. We can't go a full show without talking at least a little bit NFL, so we'll talk some Aaron Rodgers at the end of this hour. But I want to let you know, as we prepare to get to the end of the hour, I've got Mike Coppinger from The Athletic. He was there for the Canelo Alvarez, Billy Joe Saunders fight, and I'm curious what he thought of that massive crowd that was present there in Jerry World in the Dallas area. We'll unpack that a bit with him, and then I'll talk a little bit Aaron Rodgers, the latest from my perspective on the Aaron Rodgers drama. To close out the second hour of the program. Also letting you know we are scheduled to be joined by Todd Furman in the third hour of the program. Lots of different stories we are tracking. I appreciate all of you hanging out with us. When we come back, more with Mike Coppinger. We'll dive into that big boxing match on what I am calling a liberating weekend.